What's up, guys? It's Alex, and today we are reviewing the Sony Xperia 10 Mark II. I know a lot of you have been waiting for this review from me. I'm sorry it took so long, but we finally have it. But before we begin, I just wanted to say that regardless of my opinions that you're about to hear on this phone, I know for a fact this will make somebody a really good daily driver, especially in this current time frame where COVID has just stricken down so many families and people, and a lot of you may need a phone out there. And instead of just making a couple $100s back on eBay and recovering my purchase costs, I think this phone will do better in one of you guys' hands. We haven't done a giveaway in quite a long time on our channel, but if you've ever done one of them, it's very similar. You just follow the link in the description below or on our website. We have a website now, Sypnotix.com. Just go through a couple steps there. It's not that difficult to do. You don't have to pay for any costs. I'll pay for shipping as well. And hopefully this phone helps somebody out there who really needs a phone right now. But other than that, let's get this review started. So right off the bat, we're going to talk about my favorite thing about the Sony Xperia 10 Mark II. And this is something that I feel like they've improved on slightly over last year's Xperia 10, which I actually gave a pretty solid review on. And that is the body. The body on this phone is just absolutely terrific. Not only the body, but the frame. The frame is actually really nice too. It's a mixture of plastic and glass. The back is glass and the frame is a bit plasticky, but it feels very matte and very smooth to hold. I actually really like this phone, especially with the elongated body because of the 21:9 aspect ratio that this phone is known for. It's very easy to hold in the hand and it feels very nice. I purchased the phone for about $364. At that price and this build quality, I do feel like the build quality supersedes what you normally get in this price point. So I am very impressed with its build quality. And that's especially so when you compare it to last year's Xperia 10, the first generation one, where it was fully a plastic back. There was no glass finish, and it kind of had like this round curved backing. This one is just like a candy bar slab, flat back, glass. It just feels really nice in the hand. Another thing that I feel like Sony has continued on with the Xperia 10 and somewhat even improved on it is the display. I actually really liked and enjoyed the display experience on this phone. We have a 6-inch 1080p OLED display that's 21:9 aspect ratio once again with 457 ppi. That pixel density count is really good. 457 ppi for a $364 phone. I have reviewed flagship phones with 300 to 400, like low 400s. Ideally, it's going to be really sharp, and I can tell you that it is actually really sharp. And the colors are actually very nice. This OLED display is one of the better ones in this price point, period. I'm not even going to debate that in my own mind because I've used a lot of phones in this price range this last few years. Even when you compare it to phones right now in this price point, it doesn't match up too well with other phones in other categories, but display quality, it is one of the best ones. So definitely display, I appreciate and I like the colors. I love everything about it. And going back to what I said about this phone not matching up with other phones in this price point right now, $364, it's getting close to that $400 price range. That's where you get phones like the OnePlus Nord or phones like the Pixel 4a, which just got announced, and we do have one in our studio, which Lita is reviewing. That's $350, man. And the processor is better, the camera is better. There's a lot of different things about that phone that could potentially be better. The iPhone SE is also $399, so it's in the same price range as this phone. And I can tell you right now, hands down, because I was reviewing these two phones side by side, the SE and this one, the iPhone SE performs light years better than this phone. I'm not even exaggerating. We're going to get into the performance in a bit. But part of that is because the iPhone SE uses the flagship processor that Apple uses for the previous year, which is actually currently still the highest one because we don't have the new iPhone yet, while the Sony Xperia 10 Mark II uses a Snapdragon 665 with 4 gigabytes of RAM. And that itself isn't a sin, but for $365, when you can get a Pixel with a Snapdragon 700 series chipset, or you can get an iPhone for $20 more using a flagship processor, it's kind of like there's already a lot going against the Xperia 10 Mark II. One thing, though, that this phone has that those competitors don't have in this price point is micro SD storage, and it also comes with 128 gigabytes of storage by default. So that is a definite plus. Only the Pixel 4a kind of matches that in its initial price point at 350, but 128 gigabytes of storage with expandable storage, that's terrific. I'm so happy that Sony has continued that trend with this particular line of phones. Also, I do want to note that since I was talking about the Pixel 4a, the Pixel 4a doesn't use Corning Gorilla Glass 6, but this phone does. When we're talking about performance here, the performance really is a hiccup, especially when you look at it in the bigger picture. Like, if you're getting the 665 and you're getting the performance you get on this, I would swallow that pill a lot easier at the 200 price range than closer to the 400, which is what this phone is MSRP'd at. And what I mean by that is if you play games like, when I was reviewing this phone, I was really into Heroes Kintari, the Webtoons RPG game, the mobile game, and the phone was just, it was having a hard time running this game. It's not like it's a super difficult game to run. I know lower end phones, it was hard. It was kind of difficult to run this on the 10L as well. But for the Sony Xperia 10 Mark II against something in the slightly higher ballpark, that's $20 more, which is the iPhone SE, it ran flawlessly on the iPhone SE. Obviously, the processor difference there. That's what I'm talking about there. The processing power is just significantly different between the iPhone SE and this phone. And when you look at the bigger picture of it, it's kind of hard to recommend this phone already because of that. At $364 compared to $399 for the iPhone SE, the iPhone SE can run games that these things can't. When you're browsing Chrome or switching through apps and just doing your natural Android experience, it does feel like it's 2 steps behind the iPhone SE. There were a few points during my time with the 10 Mark II that I just felt like it was quite frustrating, especially when I hit this price point. Once again, I keep saying price point because I don't feel that way about the Pixel 4a. I definitely don't feel that way about the iPhone SE. I haven't used the Nord, but from what I've read about the Nord, it does seem to perform well, and a lot of that has to do with the processor. And this is on the same kind of spectrum. It really is. You cannot exclude the iPhone SE or the Pixel 4a when you talk about this phone because they reach the same price point. But once again, because this phone does share the same processor as the 10L, and that's also $100 cheaper than this, it's kind of like, where exactly does this 10 Mark II lie between? It's not competing well with the higher end on its market, and it's not competing well with the lower end on the market because it's, of course, the lower the price point with the same kind of offering, you would take the lower end price point for sure, right? So I kind of have a difficult time seeing the market. And what the 10 Mark II I feel like relies on, especially with the Mark II branding, you do feel like this is a photography thing, right? You feel like you're buying this phone and it should offer great photography because, hey, let's be honest, Sony mirrorless cameras, great standing with the community. It's not really even a debate. Like they make really good cameras. But for the mobile division, I know the perception is a little different now. The One Mark II actually is getting really good reviews. I'm actually quite impressed with the One Mark II, even though I haven't personally used it. For what I can see, since I don't have actual hands-on experience with it, it actually does seem pretty impressive. But I do have hands-on experience with the 10 Mark II. With these 3 cameras, the 12 megapixel f2.0, an 8 megapixel f2.4, and an 8 megapixel f2.2. One's an ultra wide, one's a telephoto, one's a wide lens. It's not that great of a camera. Like, I have to say the photos are very difficult to approve of for the most part, and especially in superior auto mode. Manual mode, it's a little better. I have to say that because if I don't mention that, a lot of Sony users will always criticize me because they say that people buy Sony phones to use the manual mode, which isn't incorrect. There are a lot of Sony enthusiasts who buy Sony phones to use manual, but in general, I still want to say that most people buying mobile phones use auto mode. This year, though, I feel like it took a step back. The photos here, I just cannot honestly tell you guys that I think are good. I mean, some of the photos are washed out, like really washed out. The exposure has a very difficult time dealing with exactly what to pick up. I feel like in manual mode, it takes so much more effort to get a basic shot that you can get on the iPhone. In fact, On the iPhone, on auto mode, I did take side-by-side comparison pictures. One shot I can get on the iPhone SE that I find acceptable, it takes 3, 4, 5 tries on the Sony Xperia 10 Mark II to get something similar to that. So I'm a little disappointed with that. And also the shutter. So one thing too I didn't like about this phone is that they removed the shutter button. That's a Sony staple. I say that in every Sony video. I love the Sony Xperia experience with that shutter button. It makes this feel unique. They got rid of it on the Xperia 10 Mark II. So I'm very sad about that. But when you press the actual digital shutter on the screen, it takes a good second before it takes the photo. So I don't like that, especially since I've used the Pixel. I've used some of the other phones out there who do have a quick shutter, and they just instantly take the photo for you. And also the app has crashed multiple times on me. That's nothing new. I've had this experience with Sony Xperia camera apps before. It's just reoccurring things for me with the Sony Xperia experience. This is running Android 10, by the way. So I have the current version, newest version. All the apps are updated. It's not the apps. Now, rounding out the other things that we need to talk about with this review is that it has a very big battery, 3,600 milliamp hour batteries, and that's one of the best things about this phone. I had no problem getting 4 hours of screen on time with my usage, and 4 hours is very good by my standards. 3 hours is average. Most phones I use, I can only stretch 3 hours. I guess I'm just a very intensive user. So 4 hours on this phone, I can get about like 12 to 13 hours a day before needing to charge the phone. That's actually very good. And no wireless charging. I feel like that's okay. You do get spoiled a little bit because the iPhone SE does have wireless charging for $399. But in general, I do feel like at 364 without wireless charging, with this build quality, I'm okay with no wireless charging because it still does have USB-C, which is good. I feel like most budget phones in this range now do have USB-C, which is a very good thing. Every phone should have USB-C. And rounding out some more good things about this phone, we do have a 3.5mm headphone jack. Sony DACs have always been good for headphone listening, and this has that, so you can continue using your headphones with a 3.5mm headphone jack. And then the fingerprint scanner, surprisingly, I don't have a lot to complain about. I traditionally have never really had good experiences with the side fingerprint scanner, the power button ones. When they switched over to the back, the rear ones on the XAs, I thought they were a little better. But once they went back to the side ones, like last year's Xperia 10, it just didn't work well for me because my hands do get sweaty. So that's a me problem. But at the same time, other fingerprint scanners, even with my sweaty fingers, they worked okay. So that's actually pretty good for me based on my past Sony experiences. And then finally, availability. So this phone, I normally don't talk about availability and stuff like that, but if you are in the US market, I would highly avoid this phone. And the reason I say that is even though it has some bands that work on T-Mobile's 4G LTE, it is quite a headache. I use a lot of unlocked phones from Xiaomi, Huawei, etc. From, I just import phones over and I use them on the T-Mobile network, and I get LTE here in my state. And I live in LA in California, and I'm able to get that LTE coverage. This phone struggled mightily. The APNs it doesn't work right on T-Mobile's network. And if you can't really get a phone working on T-Mobile, you're going to have a hard time getting it working on any other network here in the US. And I don't really mention this unless I have a significant problem, because I know how the LTE bands work on unlocked phones, because just look on our channel. We reviewed so many Xiaomi devices, and each one of them are a little different too in terms of how they react to the bands. From my experience, other phones with the same bands have worked on T-Mobile. Not the case here. So I wouldn't even bother importing it. Unfortunately, Sony is not selling a US version or a North America version of this phone. But yeah, my final thoughts on the Xperia 10 Mark II. It's conflicting. I do love the look and feel of the phone. I love how it's going kind of back to its grassroots of its boxy candy bar shape. I really miss that with the Xperia 10 and it's kind of like rounded back and plastic feel. I love the look on this. And the 21:9 aspect ratio display, I feel like it's one of the best in the price point. But everything else is a little lacking in the price point, especially with this wide open field of great competitors this year in 2020. I feel like don't know if I can really recommend anybody going out spending close to $400 on this phone when there's better offerings, total packages. Like if you only have $400 to buy a phone, you're looking for the best value you can get overall. iPhone SE gives you really good overall balance. The Pixel 4a, even though we're early in our review of it, it feels like it offers a lot for that price. And even the OnePlus Nord, it offers build quality, which this phone has, and it looks like the experience might be better due to the chipset. And if you want to talk about just processor power too, you look $100 less, you can get the 10L from TCL. So I don't really know where this falls in. So I will actually just say don't buy this. Unfortunately, I don't see a market for this unless you're a hardcore Sony fan, like me. I buy Sonys every single year, even though I don't know if I'm going to get the One Mark II. If you guys are interested in me reviewing that phone too, I don't know how many $1,000 phones I can get every single year. I already spent a grand buying the Z Flip. So yeah, let me know if you're interested in that. If there's enough people wanting me to check that out, I'll spend the money and buy that. But yeah, I'm Alex from the Sypnotix. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe, like, and comment. I would love to hear your thoughts. Check out our new website, sypnotix.com. Our written review and other things will be on that website right now, so check that out, and I'll see you guys next time. The other day, my house was leaking, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do about this. I'm a tech guy. I only know tech, so how do I fix that? And then you subscribed, and it fixed it, so thank you.